in Region 10, mainly due to the amount of forest fire we experienced during the dry weather that we experienced in 2023, 2024. There were a number of forest fires across the country. As you know, at that point in time, there was limited capacity to deal with forest fire. Thankfully, now we have had a partnership with the Brazilian government where we're enhancing our capability and capacity to deal with forest fire. We've had a number of personnel trained in Brazil, and we continue the collaboration with the government of Brazil to enhance our capacity because it's something that we must be ready for. Climate change is real, and we've seen already a prolonged dry spell. We have seen what is happening in the US as well, in California, the massive forest fire ongoing. So it's something that we cannot take lightly. So some amount of the provision was spent to do limited reclamation because this is not pits we are speaking of. This is burnt out vegetation, but to do some amount of reforestation in the Bisaruni area in Region 10. And specifically to do reclamation, which was as I mentioned, on the Wisma end of Linden, very close to the residential area. We have planted over 2,000 seedlings or trees on a 30-acre plot in that area, varying from different species, bulletwood, barmali, acacia. Some of them are fast-growing species, while some of them will require longer periods. Mr. Speaker, I want to say too on this particular project that on average, and many countries would have experienced it, many countries are ongoing reclamation reforestation, and the average cost per acre in most countries would range between 15 to 20 million US dollars. Sorry, 15 to 20 million Guyana dollars. We have managed through the collaboration between the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission and the Guyana Forestry Commission to bring that cost per acre well below $10 million. Well below $10 million, creating employment as well. I'm happy to say that during that project at the Korea and Linden, we would have created over 100 jobs, temporary jobs during the phase of reclamation, reforestation. And we have a few permanent jobs now, ensuring that we maintain that site. With regards to the allocation for 2025, this allocation will go towards a similar reclamation exercise, this time in Region 8, the areas surrounding Madhya, because I'm not sure how recent or how often we visit those communities. Maybe MP Sinclair, who is from Madhya, will tell you that the areas very close or within the boundaries of the township, there are large mining pits, some of them abandoned. Those are the areas that we are targeting again in 2025. A total of 30 acres in Region 10, while we intend, in Region 8, sorry, while we intend to expand the Region 10 reclamation from 30 acres to 40 acres as well too. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. MP Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair, could the Honourable Minister turn to Volume 2, page 138. I'm looking at indicator number 4. It says a number of sanctions related to natural resource conflicts issued in 2024 was 82. However, the Minister's target for 2025 is 400. Could the Minister say if this 400 is an indication that the Ministry plans on sanctioning more persons to this amount of this year? And which industry in specific is this related to?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me thank the honorable member for the question too. It's a very good question because in the sector that we manage, Mr. Speaker, there are always infractions. Monitoring mining in Guyana is not an easy task by itself. Sometimes we are very critical on the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission and the Guyana Forestry Commission and the officers. But we have to understand that the terrain that we work in, the condition of leaving their families on the coast and working in the interior is very difficult. It's a very difficult task to manage mining activities in general. Um, so what we expect that due to the increased monitoring capabilities and activities in mining districts, we expect that we will have a reduction in infractions in 2025. What, what we have endeavored to do is to move towards monitoring by the use of technology. Because at some point in time, we will have to transition almost fully to using technology, even though the cost of it is expensive. Because having over 50 stations, field stations, that is a combination between GFC and GGMC, and having 200 or 300 personnel, you would understand and you would agree with me that it is very difficult to monitor all the mining districts and all the forest concessions within our interior regions. So we're expecting, first of all, to ensure that our compliance and our monitoring increase significantly in 2025. And that is something that we're committed to doing, to do at the Ministry of Natural Resources. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Speaker. On the same line item 6284, in the 2024 budget, the minister announced $400 million of that sum there would be committed to mineral mapping. So could I ask the minister what has been done with that $400 million to kickstart the mineral mapping inventory, and if you can share that inventory or whatever is there so far with the National Assembly, and also if you can say exactly what was done in the area of critical minerals with respect to lithium, which the minister promised at the end of his budget speech. He expressed that there is a need for there to be mineral mapping in that area because of our transition to renewable energy. He expressed that importance, so I'd like to know what was done in that area.
Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the mineral mapping project, which started in 2024, will continue into 2025. And as mentioned in 2024, when we were at this similar exercise, I would have mentioned that it will be a multi-year project. This is an exercise or a project that should have been done a long time now. It is very critical, it is very necessary, especially in keeping with our commitment in the low carbon development strategy. It's actually included in that low carbon development strategy that we need to ensure that we have a proper inventory of our forest stock, which we would have completed, and also a proper inventory, updated inventory of our mineralization across the mining districts throughout the country. Mr. Speaker, we went through a public process of contracting a company from the US. We would advertise. We had 5 companies, 2 from the US, 2 from Canada, and 1 from the UK responding to that advertisement. Through an evaluation process, Global Venture Inc. out of the US was contracted to carry out this exercise. This exercise, Mr. Speaker, the last time, as a matter of fact, the last time we did a mineral inventory in Guyana, I think it's dated back to 1968 or thereabouts. So it is very much needed, but I think the reason why it wasn't done in the past, it is because of the cost factor. It's very expensive to carry out a total mineral mapping exercise in all the mining districts in our country. And that is why we've decided that we are going to focus primarily on 4 of the major mining districts in Guyana, namely the Northwest Mining District, the Mazruni Mining District, the Pataru Mining District, and the Peruni Mining District, which happens to be the four mostly active mining districts in the country, and which we believe that these mining districts contain most of the mineralization. And when we say mineralization, or we speak of updating our mineral map, Mr. Speaker, it's not only about gold, because most of the time we only think that mining is gold only. But what we have contracted this company to do is to recognize, based on this survey, all minerals that exist in Guyana and to possibly put a quantity on it or quantify it. And also the project entails physical drilling too. So it's not only about the aeromagnetic survey, which will be done this year, but it's also about physical drilling on the ground once areas are identified that there is mineralization or some form of mineral. But before I go to the deliverables in 2024 as asked by the honorable member, Mr. Speaker, let me speak on lithium because that was one of the questions that was asked by the honorable member too. The issue only, and yes, we did mention, as a matter of fact, we mentioned in 2024 and 2023 that the critical minerals are very important, and we have to ensure that if there are critical minerals exist or there are traces in Guyana, that we must be able to explore and to find it. And this project here, part of this project is to ensure that we look to see if we have those critical minerals in Guyana, which includes lithium. As you know, it is a very sought after mineral, especially with regards to commitments around the world moving towards renewable energy. So, Mr. Speaker, in 2024, of course, there are some amount of data at GGMC. There is some amount of data at GGMC. So obviously the project would entail developing a dynamic data integration and modeling platform. Mr. Speaker, there's a question, so I'm attempting to answer that question and to provide enough information as possible. And we also have to remember that it's not only for us in this house, but the public is also looking at it. And this is a very critical and important sector, which means that we must provide the information that is necessary. So the reconnaissance survey was done in 2024. The inception report and strategic roadmap was done by the company in preparation for the physical survey in 2025. The stakeholders engagement plan was drawn up. The environmental baseline work was done. Capacity building, of course, we have a number of staff from the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, which are being trained by the company, because when the project is finished, it is expected that GGMC will continue the process. So, Mr. Speaker, I do hope that this will bring some amount of clarity with regards to this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable members, part of the guidelines is that the policies for which these allocations are made, persons can speak about the policy, question about the policy. And if we could question about the policy, we should accept to listen to what the policy is. Honorable Member, Mr. Holder.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I thank the Minister for that marathon answer. I have a number of other questions. On the same line item, or rather I should skip, Comrade Speaker, because I don't want another marathon answer. Let's look at 6302. Training. Mr. Speaker, Under this program, the natural resource management, if you examine volume 2 of the budget estimates, you will see a series of strategies and explanations as it relates to the impact of those strategies. On the issue of coal, gold has declined more than 30% from 2019. So, in fact, the declaration from small and medium scale miners would have dropped by over 33,000 ounces. So my question is, what strategies were implemented from 2020 to 2024 to improve the situation with gold, and why those strategies would have failed? And what new strategies will be implemented in 2025 to ensure that the country benefits from a significant increase in declarations from small and medium scale miners?
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Chair, thank you. And I can assure you that the question has nothing to do with the line item that was asked by the honorable member. But for clarity, and as I mentioned, it is important that we share information with the viewing public. I will offer an answer to the question. But the line item referred to the honorable member is with regards to training. Training of wardens, training of officers who monitor. That has nothing to do with gold production and decline of gold production. But, but, but we will answer the question. There is nothing wrong with answering the question. The figures are there. The figures are there for the public to see. It's no secret. And unlike the honorable member, Mr. Chair, the honorable member decided to compare 2019 from 2019 to 2024. But what should have been done by the honorable member is to compare from 2016, because your government was managing the sector in 2016, from 2015 onwards. So 2016, Mr. Chair, we had the highest production in country, over 700,000 ounces. 2017, there was a decline. 2018, there was a decline. 2019, there was a decline. 2020, there was a decline. 2021, 2022, 2023, there were declines. So our peak gold production was in 2016. And then after 2016, every single year, under both governments, we would have seen a decline in gold production. We would have seen a decline in gold production. So I wanted to make that point for us, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are a number of factors which contributed to, one, the massive increase in production in 2016, and I mentioned that in my budget speech, with regards to Troy Resources and Aurora Gold Mine, then Guyana Gold Fields, starting production. And we know that for one of these large-scale companies to start production, it takes about 3 to 4 years for them to build out the mine and to start production. So then we know in 2016, when the production peaked, we know that the build out of those mines started since 2012, 2013, under the People's Progressive Party Civic Administration. And then we saw the decline after 2016. We saw the closure of Troy Resources. We saw the change in ownership of Guyana Gold Fields, from Guyana Gold Fields to Zijing Mining Company in 2020, early 2021. Those are some of the factors that affected the large-scale production. With regards to small and medium-scale production, we have seen a decline over those years, starting from 2017 right down to 2023. And there are a number of factors. One, Mr. Speaker, is the increase in alternative economic activities and job opportunities, especially on the coast, with the advent and the development of the oil and gas sector. We have seen many persons leaving the mining sector, especially operators, truck drivers, and working on the coast with contractors, with oil and gas company, mainly because these people live on the coast. And in the past, they would leave their families and their home and work in the interior in the gold bush. Now, they can live on the coast with their family in the comfort of their own home and still earn almost the same amount of money that they earned previously. And that is a fact. Whether we want to play politics with the sector or not, that is a fact. And we can easily verify that. Mr. Speaker, other factors, climate change is real as I mentioned. And we would have suffered over the years. One, we had a severe flooding. I personally went into the Mazaruni area where the water was about 15 to 20 feet above normal height. And it's impossible. It is impossible to conduct mining in those conditions, especially when your pits are flooded. Then after that, we had severe dry season, drought. And you would know too that it is impossible to do mining without water. Then it is no secret in Guyana that there is a shortage of labor, especially in those sectors, that operate in the hinterland regions. Added to that, Mr. Speaker, we have always been mining in some, or we've been mining in areas that have always been accessible and are close to communities where people dwell, especially in Northwest, especially in Madhya and Bartika area, because they're easy to access or they're close to where we live or we dwell. Mr. Speaker, after mining these areas for decades after decades, you would expect that the amount of minerals that exist will diminish over a period of time. And these factors, among many others, would have contributed to the decline in the gold production declaration over those years. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to say that in 2024, I'm happy to say that in 2024, we have seen an increase of over 2,000 ounces in our production for the first time after 2016. What is important to note too, Mr. Speaker, that even though it was a slight increase in production in 2024, we have earned, gold has earned an additional 181 million US dollars in 2024 compared to 2023. And the final part of the question, I believe, was what are we doing to address the situation? Mr. Speaker, we have been working with Aurora Gold Mine, Zijing, so much so that Guyana today can boast of its first underground mine, world-class underground mine, for the first time in the history of our country. So much so that we have seen an increase in production by that company in 2024, and we are projected to see an increase in 2025. Mr. Speaker, what we have done in 2024 is that we have awarded over 400 small blocks to Guyanese small miners, because it is important that small miners have access to their own land. That has always been a cry by small miners, and it will continue to be a cry by small miners. Everyone wants land, but they want land with gold on it. That is the bottom line. If you ask a miner if you want land, you would say, yeah, you want land with gold on it. You just don't want land. So, Mr. Speaker, we have, in 2024 alone, we have awarded over 400 small blocks to Guyanese small miners. And we are investing over $2.5 billion in the road network, in upgrading and maintaining the road so that there is also accessibility to those mining blocks as well too. What we need to do as a sector is to ensure that we work with miners to increase their recovery rate, because the recovery rate in our country is too low. It is too low, and once we can work with miners to increase the recovery rate, it simply means that the sector would be even more profitable and our production would be definitely higher. So it is a work in progress, Mr. Speaker. It will always be a work in progress. I, as Minister of Natural Resources, or the next minister, the next one, will never be able to solve all the problems in the mining sector. But that is why we're here. We are working with miners to work on the issues and to have them resolved as they come up. Thank you very much.
Don, you want Don?
He got recognized. Can I go ahead, Speaker? Thank you, thank you, Comrade Chair. To the, to the Honorable Minister, I am looking at the same page, 262, Agency 262, page 138, Minister. As in one of your indicators, you have number of pilot studies completed. In 2024, your figure is 15, and in 2025, I see you plan to complete 31. Out of those pilot studies that you have completed in 2024, or the ones you're planning to do in 2025, is there any plans to establish a GGMC office in Cameron? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the honorable member pointed exactly what I was referring to when it comes to doing pilot studies and testing to increase the increased recovery rate, because I know the honorable member is from a predominantly mining community and is very much interested in the sector like we are too. So it is obvious that we work together on increasing. So most of these studies were targeted to look at possible ways in which we can increase recovery rates. What other methods can be used other than mercury too? Because as you know, we have to phase out the use of mercury. So we we will ensure that we will continue these surveys and projects, because we have to work with communities like Jawala, like other communities, to see how we can have equipment at a central point to do some amount of maybe what we call a term as toll processing, if possible. If possible, that is another method in which we can increase the recovery rate. With regards to the station in Cameron, what we can do, I think, what we can do is to, at this point in time, is to increase the frequency of visits by GGMC and by the wardens, not only to monitor mining activities, but also to lend support to the community, technical support to the community, because I believe that is what is needed. And what we have said to mines officers is that you are not mining police. You're supposed to lend technical support to the communities, to the miners, so that they can improve their methods of recovery, and also health and safety is critical with regards to mining too. So we can commit to more frequent visits, but we have no allocation in 2025 to set up a permanent station there as yet. So I don't want to promise and then we cannot fulfill. But what I can promise is more frequent visits to lend more technical support to the community. Thank you.
MP Hastings. Honourable members, I will now put a question that the sum stated for Agency 26, Program 262, Natural Resources Management, current expenditure, stands part of the estimates. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. Ayes have it. Sum stated now stands part of the estimates. Please turn to pages 166 and 167, and I propose the question that the sum stated for Agency 26, Program 264, Petroleum Management, current expenditure, now stands part of the estimates. Honourable members, I now put a question. Honourable member, Mr. Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, sir. I start off on volume 2, sir, page 140, indicator number 5. Number of new PSAs issued. 0 in 2024, 4 this year. Can the Honorable Minister say where and who are these 4 that you preempted you will be issuing this year?
Honourable Minister?
Mr. Chair, I think the honorable members on the opposite side wanted to save time or to hurry my answers so that we can reach the petroleum management sector. And I want to say that, right, I want to say that we have nothing to hide about the management of the petroleum sector. And we will answer the question, whether it's here in Committee of Supplies, or whether you have a question anywhere. We will answer the question, we'll continue to do so. So I don't know what is the big noise about, but we are willing to answer any question anytime, not only in Committee of Supplies. Mr. Chair, the question was asked of the PSAs, that there's 4 PSAs that will be issued in 2025. Now, Mr. Chair, you would know that we started a process of ensuring that we craft a production sharing agreement that will be a model PSA used in every single engagement as we move forward in the oil and gas sector. It will be a PSA that is based on international standards and a PSA that will bring benefits to Guyanese, or bring more benefits to Guyanese than the Stabroek Block PSA. Mr. Speaker, we started that process over a year ago of ensuring that we build out a PSA that will be recognized internationally and that will bring additional benefits. So much so that we have changed the fiscal terms in the new PSA. We have changed the fiscal terms in the new PSA that existed in the Stabroek PSA signed in June of 2016 by the then APNU AFC government. The PSA that was signed in 2016, Mr. Speaker, it covers the Stabroek Block. And I want to say to my Guyanese brothers and sisters that the PSA covers only one block. The model PSA that we have developed will cover all the other blocks outside of Stabroek. And there are many others, the Kanji, the Kaichor, the Orangewood, the Roraima, Kanuku, the Quarantine, and now we have the new ones that were auctioned. Mr. Speaker, the new fiscal terms in the PSA, as promised, will bring additional benefits to Guyanese. And let me just go through a few for the benefit of our people. In the 2016 PSA, there is 0% taxation. There is 0% taxation by the company. That is the agreement signed by the APNU AFC government in 2016. The APNU AFC government signed an agreement to say that it will be 0% tax. 0% tax, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes I don't think they want to hear it, but it's true. In the new PSA, and even the Honorable Sherwin Holder, when he spoke, Mr. Speaker, and when the Honorable Opposition Leader spoke too, they made commitments to reviewing the Stabroek PSA. I didn't hear from either gentleman that they will renegotiate, but I heard the word review. We have made it clear that we are not going to renegotiate the Stabroek contract. We have made it very clear that we are not going to renegotiate the Stabroek contract but we are going to develop a model PSA to bring additional benefits for any other PSA that will be signed with any other company, including ExxonMobil. Including ExxonMobil. And if you look, at our manifesto, indeed you would see renegotiation slash better contract administration. You cannot read part of it and leave the other part. It says slash better contract administration. So, Mr. Speaker, one of the fiscal terms that has already been changed in new PSA that the honorable member asks of is instead of 0% tax in the Stabrook PSA, any future PSA moving forward will have 10% tax. Will have 10% tax. Mr. Speaker, instead of 2% royalty in the Stabrook PSA, we will now have 10% royalty in any future PSAs. Mr. Speaker, instead of 75% cost recovery in the Stabrook block, we will then have a 65% cost recovery. And what does that mean, Mr. Speaker? It simply means more money up front for Guyana while we are still paying off the cost bank or the capital investment by the companies investing. In the Stabrook block, the agreement is 75% cost recovery. So it simply means that 75% of the oil or the revenue goes towards repaying the cost bank. And out of the 25%, Guyana gets 50% of the share of that. And that is where you get a 12.5% share of oil that Guyana enjoys. Mr. Speaker, we have kept the 50-50 profit and loss. That is in the Stabrook PSA. We have kept that in the other PSA. We have ensured that work programs are adhered to, and that if the work program is not adhered to, there is a penalty whereby the operator, the companies, must pay at least half of the amount of money that was allocated towards that work program. So we have made that promise, and we have delivered on that promise, whereby now we have two model PSAs, and I say two model PSAs because one is for deep water, which has different conditions with regards to work program, and then there is a shallow water PSA, which have different conditions with regards to work program, but the fiscal regime remains the same for the new PSA as I just highlighted. Mr. Speaker, with regards to the four PSAs that the honorable member mentioned, the four PSAs that the honorable member is inquiring of, it is to deal with the bid run that we had, and those are the four PSAs that will be awarded or signed in 2025 with the companies that will be awarded those four blocks. So that is the four PSAs that will be awarded in 2024. But the four PSA doesn't mean four different PSAs. It just means four PSAs for four blocks. For four blocks. So in no way we are doing specific PSA for a block. The PSA for all blocks must be the same, shallow, and all must be the same for deep. The fiscal conditions are all the same. It is just four PSAs for four new blocks that will be awarded. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Mr. Chair, I'm sure we asked who. Sorry, he's already said it's all public information. So we asked him who, if you're going to sign one PSA 4 blocks. Who, sir? And you can start again on a whole new speech. Public is looking.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I will, or we will, announce the four blocks that will be awarded by the companies at a later date, and for obvious reasons too. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable members, I now put a question that the sum stated for Agency 26, Program 264, Petroleum Management, current expenditure stands part of the estimates. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. Ayes have it. Some stated now stands part of the estimates. Honorable members, let's turn to pages 503. Page 503. And I propose the question that the sum stated for program 261, capital expenditure, stands part of the estimates. Honorable member, Mr. Patterson.
No, sorry.
Honorable members, I now put a question that the sum stated for program 261, capital expenditure, stands part of the estimates. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. Program 261. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. Ayes have it. Program 261, capital, now stands part of the estimates. Program 262, natural resource management, capital expenditure. I propose a question that this stands part of the estimates. Honorable members, I now put a question that program 262, capital expenditure, stands part of the estimates. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. Ayes have it. The program now stands part of the estimates. Program 264, Petroleum Management, Capital Expenditure. I propose the question that this now stands part of the estimates.
Mr. Speaker,
Honorable Member, Mr. Holder.
Mr. Speaker, Program Code 44,600, Oil and Gas Sector Development. Could the Minister say why there isn't an allocation under this code to deal with or to kickstart the arbitration?
Honorable Member, maybe I can help you frame it a different way.
Could I ask the Minister if there is any provision under this allocation which deals with the arbitration process to recover the $214 million flagged in the audit? Since I noticed the staff which would have been fingered by the government in relation to this matter, who would have been disciplined, sitting behind the minister, I assume that we're progressing with it.
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, when a question is asked, it's only fair that we provide an answer for it. It's not a question session, it's a question and answer session. Unfortunately, Mr. Chair, the question that was asked of the honorable member, it's a bit too late, because he had the opportunity, I think, when we were examining the current expenditures, to ask that question, because it won't be part of capital spending. It will not be part of capital spending. So, under the current expenditure, with your permission, yes, we do have allocation on the current expenditure, but it doesn't apply to this capital estimates that we're examining. But I believe that the honorable member wants to make a political statement rather than to ask a question.
Political statement. Simple.
Similarly to all the noise that I've been hearing on the opposite side, when I've been answering the question too. So I think in all fairness, I should give an answer, I should provide some information to the honorable member with regards to that. And in fact, this question was asked of me in 2024, estimates by the honorable member, Ms. Annette Ferguson. I think Ms. Annette Ferguson is the member that asked the question with regards to the 214 million and who carry away the money and where is the money and all sorts of fanciful question. But again, Mr. Speaker, the honorable member seems to not understand how an audit functions. It has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with physical cash. An audit is basically going through the expenses of the company and to ensure that the expenses of the company are petroleum related, are petroleum related. And at that point in time, or for the forest audit, we had IHS Market that was contracted to do that audit from 1999 to 2017. And the report submitted would have shown, the final report submitted would have shown that we did not agree that $214 million, which was added to the cost bank, it was not used for petroleum expenses, or either they did not provide enough evidence or receipts or invoices to justify that it was used for petroleum expenses. That is how an audit functions. So it has nothing to do with cash transaction or money missing or money here. So we need to understand the process. We need to understand the process as to how or why an audit is carried out. It simply means that the government is saying, based on the advice from the consultant, that we don't accept this part as being petroleum expenses, or you have not justified or have enough evidence to show that this should be part of cost back. That is what it simply means, Honorable Member Ferguson, because it seems as though you're still not understanding the process of doing an audit. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Member, Mr. Holder.
Mr. Speaker, you still didn't answer the question, but I'll move on in the interest of time. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, we had a World Bank grant. I noted, I say this because under the same code, this is a World Bank loan. So there was a collaboration with the World Bank. A grant was given for $1 million to bring in the Mexican consultant who would set up an oversight program to lead to the setting up of the petroleum unit in the EPA, where we would have had about 36 professionals there in petroleum, in health and safety, in the environment, different things. Can the minister say what has become of that program? And would you agree that, all right, let me leave it right there. What has become of that program?
Mr. Chair, again, the allocation has nothing to do with this capital allocation here.
I should have said if it was merged into this program by some means, because it's World Bank, and it's along the same line of training the oil and gas sector. So I want to know if it was merged into this program.
Mr. Chair, I see no way how it could be merged into 2025 budgetary allocation if this grant was since in 2019, as the honorable member mentioned. Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned, we can answer any question. We are not afraid of. I could have easily said, like the honorable members wanted me to say, yes or no. I could have said it's not part of the program and I could take my seat. So in all fairness, even though it is not part of the budgetary allocation here, I choose not to say that and to take my seat, but to offer an explanation in the interest of transparency and for the people who are listening as well too. The $1 million grant, this is separate. I think he's mixing up the $1 million grant, which is separate from the $20 million loan from the World Bank to manage and to build out the framework of the oil and gas sector. Right? So, Mr. Speaker, it was mostly designed to build out or to form or to establish the Department of Energy, which was, I think, under the Ministry of Presidency at that point in time, headed, forgive me, I don't think, Mr. Speaker, I should call a name, or I should call the name of director at that point in time, but it was headed by a gentleman at that point in time. Mr. Chair, it was also used to build out the capacity of EPA, as mentioned by the honorable member, to build out the capacity of the EPA to manage the oil and gas sector. Because you could imagine that we had an environmental protection agency that was unprepared. And we knew that we discovered oil in May of 2015. We signed a PSA in June of 2016. We were preparing for forest oil in December of 2019, and I sat in this house from October 2016 onwards, and I could recall almost every single member of the government then boasting of forest oil, and that forest oil will be soon. But then nothing was being done to build out the framework to manage the oil and gas sector. The honorable member mentioned a grant in 2019-2020, a grant in 2019-2020. That is why I took my time to chronicle the events in the oil and gas sector. Discovery in May 2015, PSA signed in June 2016, forest oil in December 2019, but we are speaking of a grant in 2019-2020 to build out the framework and to assist the EPA and to set up a Department of Energy. When we were coming to Parliament every single year from 2016 onwards, boasting of forest oil. But we did nothing to build out the framework to manage forest oil. Rather than we were helter-skelter, we were rushing in 2019 to set up a Department of Energy under the Ministry of Presidency and to build capacity at EPA at that point in time. Mr. Speaker, what is important to note too, that if you issue a production license, then it must have an environmental permit with it too. It must have an environmental permit. So if we were building capacity in 2019-2020 at EPA, how is it that EPA issue an environmental permit for the LISA 1, LISA 2 license production area? That is a question that we need to answer, because there was no capacity at that point in time. And that is why, Mr. Chair, the EPA illegally issue a 20 years environmental permit for the LISA project. A 20-year, honorable opposition leader, a 20-year environmental permit for the LISA 1, LISA 2 project. We went to court, the honorable AG went to court, and it's illegal. How can you issue a 20-year environmental permit for a project? So yes, it was meant to enhance and to build out the capacity of the Environmental Protection Agency to deal with the new oil and gas sector. That project has continued. We have trained. We have I think it's about 15 to 20 persons who are trained to work with the oil and gas sector, the Environmental Protection Agency. We have built out monitoring capacity at the Environmental Protection Agency so that we can monitor our maritime space and detect oil spills and any activity, especially around the production areas. So much so that we can monitor almost in real time any vessel approaching or moored alongside any one of the FPSO offshore. That is the capacity that exists presently at the Environmental Protection Agency. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP Holder.
Mr. Speaker, according to the Minister, the EPA and UAFC did nothing in terms of the legal framework and capacity building, yet he refers to a loan currently being utilized by this government that was put in place by the UAFC. But Mr. Speaker, there is more to it, and I want to ask the Minister this. This very loan that we're talking about, the $4.2 billion loan that we're currently talking about, could the Minister say why his government did not utilize it and had it languishing 2020, 2021, for 3 years, Mr. Speaker? Then they started to use it. Also, I recognize at the end of this year, they will not complete using up all the sum. And this project, I think it got an extension rather. They asked for an extension. It was to be from 2019 up to 2024. The World Bank would have granted an extension up to 2025. And if you look at volume 3, you'll see just that, 2019 to 2025. So My question is, well, there will be, with this allocation of 850 million, that will carry it to about 78%, leaving about 22% unspent. How is government intends to deal with that?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the honorable member is right. The 20 million that we got under the World Bank project will not be exhausted in 2025,
They didn't use it for
but
3
rather
years.
it will go over into 2026. We're talking to the World Bank to extend that project. And not extend the project because we failed to utilize the money or we did not implement or build out the
Exactly that.
framework. Mr. Speaker,
They didn't appreciate that we put the foundation
sometimes
in place.
there is a mentality that if you have a loan, you have to use all the money. Mr. Speaker, we are working contrary to that. The idea is not to spend out the money. The idea is to ensure that we build out a framework and an architecture to manage the sector in a very cost-effective way. And I can tell you that every new framework that is in place, the new act, the Local Content Act, the new bill that will come to Parliament, has already brought significant changes in the way in which we manage the sector in a very prudent manner. So we could have simply used it out and say we complete our program. But Mr. Speaker, building out the sector is a work in progress. It is a work in progress. So I want to say that indeed, we will extend this project into 2026 as we continue to build out the framework, the legal and regulatory framework to manage the sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
MP.
Speaker. So they will have to obviously ask for an extension again if they haven't done so. Mr. Speaker, on the same line item, on the same code, in the first 26 discoveries, oil discoveries that is, the nation was given up an update on each discovery. And that amounted to about 11 billion barrels. 20 more discoveries has since been announced. I believe the figure is now around 46 discoveries in the Starbuck block. But yet we have no update in terms of the reserves that are there. Now, my question to the minister, is there any appropriation in this sum in terms of monitoring and understanding the oil reserves level as new discoveries occur? And why is this government failing to release an update on the reserves? I want to add this to it as well, Comrade Speaker. Now, there is a decommissioning cost that is taken out, that goes into Exxon's account. And a key aspect of the equation to calculate the decommissioning cost is the level of reserves. It has to be used in that equation. And therefore, we would not know, or the nation would not know whether we are being overcharged or undercharged if we don't know what those reserves are. In fact, Exxon would have reported that they provide the government with the necessary information, and so I conclude that they have the information at hand, and therefore I would like to ask them as well how much money has been paid to Exxon or deducted over the years in terms of decommissioning costs.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, again, I think the honorable member is asking the question under the wrong project code. But nevertheless, we will answer. Mr. Chair, there is no reason, when you look at it logically, there is no reason for Exxon or the government of Guyana to withhold any information as to our discovered resources. As a matter of fact, it would be counterproductive not to say we have 15 or 20 or 30 billion. It will make Guyana a more attractive place for investment. It will make our basin even more attractive with regards to companies wanting to come into the Guyana basin. So I don't see I don't see the rationale as to the thinking behind it, that maybe the government is withholding some kind of information and it's state secret and they don't want to see how many oil is there. It is counterproductive not to say that. Because look at our bid round, for example. We decide that we're going to go to the bid round without the 3D seismic survey, that we are going to go at it with the limited data that we had. Now, had we done 3D seismic, which would have probably taken 24 months at a cost too, and had we say that our discoverable resources in the Stabroek block now is 20 billion barrels of oil, it means that we would have attracted more interest. It means that everybody would have wanted to be a part of the Guyana Basin. So I wanted to say that up front because it is being proffered that the government is withholding information, or Exxon is not withholding. It is counterproductive. Look at a company like Exxon. If Exxon can say that we have 15 billion barrels of oil in the Guyana Basin, the share price go up tomorrow morning. Look at it logically. The share price will go up tomorrow morning right away. So it's not that we don't want to say, but that is the figure. We cannot manufacture a figure and say, oh, we have 15 billion, oh, we have 30 billion. We have to ensure we say the truth to the public. And that is the truth. We have 11 billion barrels of oil. The honorable member mentioned about the additional discoveries and all that. Yes, but we have had a slowdown too in among the discoveries that we've had over the last year or so. But if the honorable gentleman understand how the sector works, is that yes, you may have a discovery and they may say, oh, we encounter 150 feet of oil-bearing sand, and you might decide that you're going to use that to shore up your resources, or to say this is equivalent to 2 billion or 3 billion. It don't work like that. There's an appraisal program that follows every discovery, and it could go either way. Based on the appraisal program, it could say, look, instead of 165 feet of oil-bearing sand, we now have 250 feet. And we can estimate at 500 million barrels of oil. Or the appraisal program could go the other way and say, you know what? Maybe we overestimated it at first. And the reality is, it is not 165. It is just 65. And it is not 500 million barrels. It is just 200 million barrels. So you need to understand the sector too, how it works. It's not going and finding an ounce of gold and selling it to go aboard. It's a totally different ballgame when it comes to the oil and gas sector. So yes, you might have additional discoveries, but when you carry out the appraisal program, you realize that, you know what? Yes, we said in 2022 and 2023, we had 10 discoveries and it should be X amount. But when you carry out the appraisal program, you realize it is not really that amount. We have to readjust the amount of recoverable barrels that we would have declared. So it is not a straightforward thing to say that, oh, we had 50 discoveries and then we had 6 more, so we're supposed to increase. It don't work like that. It is based on the appraisal program by the company. And again, I'm going to reiterate, Mr. Speaker, it is counterproductive and it makes absolutely no sense for the country or the company not to declare the true amount of resources. Thank you.
MP holder.
Yes, thank you, Comrade Speaker. The Minister, I don't know if he forgot the last part. The question was loaded in terms of how much money was paid to Exxon or withdrawn to deal with decommissioning costs.
Minister.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, but that will be part of the audit that is being done. The decommissioning fund, is something that was introduced in the Petroleum Activities Act. There was no decommissioning fund before the Petroleum Activities Act. And the Petroleum Activities Act was passed in 2023. It was passed in 2023. There is none of those, there is none of those new developments. I think it's Waru and Whiptail that has started to produce as yet. So with regards to the information that the honorable member is requesting, that will be part of the audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Speaker. Now, same program, it deals with capacity building, and so, Comrade Speaker, under the previous government, we would have set up under Vice Chancellor Griffith at the university, a petroleum engineering training department in collaboration with UWI and the University of Trinidad and Tobago. So I'd like to ask the minister, whatever happened with that program, and if any sums here are allocated to boost that program, which was started by the previous government.
Minister?
Mr. Chair, again, this is probably a program that the gentleman is referring to maybe in 2018, 2019, I don't know when is the period. But again, this is 2025 and we have moved far away from that. We have moved far away from that, so much so that the University of Guyana from January 2025 is free, which includes the petroleum program at the University of Guyana. So it simply means that any young Guyanese who wants to study in the field can go and register at University of Guyana free of cost. Free of cost. Besides from that, Mr. Speaker, we are building out the Guyana Technical Training College. The Guyana Technical Training College in Borbice. And that technical training college have already graduated. I personally was at one of the graduation where 24 young Guyanese from across the country graduated, and they're working on the Unity, the LISA Unity FPSO as we speak. Mr. Speaker, recently another 25 was graduated from that program, and we will continue to see young people graduating from the Guyana Technical Training College to work in the oil and gas sector, besides from free university education. And there is a petroleum program at the University of Guyana. So maybe the question was asked just to show or to justify that the APNU AFC, they were doing something with regards to training Guyanese. Well, if you did, yes, but I'm showing you what we are doing now too. But I'm showing you what we are doing now too with regards to training Guyanese to work in the oil and gas sector. We have about 10 young Guyanese through a partnership with CNOC who are studying in China presently on a scholarship program. And they will return soon to work in the oil and gas sector in Guyana, as well as a number of other persons who are studying through the BID program and other scholarship program who will offer services to the oil and gas sector. That is what we are doing with regards to training, Mr. Speaker, so that Guyanese, young Guyanese, can be certified and trained to work in the oil and gas sector. Thank you.
MP?
Thank you, Comrade Speaker. So essentially, not very much at the University of Guyana. I think the minister said something, and I think I should respond in terms of a question. I don't think he understands the level that the University of Trinidad and Tobago is at in terms of oil and gas, their expertise and experience in terms of that program which I referred. So, Comrade Speaker, we're talking about building capacity.
The first statement you made, is it asking him a question if he understands that too? Because you made a statement.
Well, I don't.
I should give him a chance to talk about his information about that. Go ahead.
Well, certainly, if he wants, he can comment on it. But I'll move on to capacity building. That's what we were talking about in terms of the oil and gas sector here under this program. And I noticed, Comrade Speaker, that in volume 2 under the indicators at number 7, number of jobs created in the natural resource sector. In 2024, you had 5,368, but the target for 2025, when you expect to see an increase based on all these things that the minister just said that they're doing in terms of the sector and the sector growing, to new heights. We noticed that there is a target of just 1,980, which is way below 50% of what they claim to have achieved in 2024. Could the minister explain that decline, the reason for that decline?
Minister,
Mr. Chair, I would have some difficulty with this particular question because I don't think the good gentleman is reading the budget too well, with all due respect. The figures that he would have made reference to falls under Agency Code 261, Policy and Administration. And we are discussing now 264, Petroleum Management. So I think there is some kind of misunderstanding, or either he's not reading it properly. Because the figure that the gentleman read out, it says that in 2024, number of jobs created in natural resources sector, 5,368. The target in 2025, 1,980 is under program 261. And the natural resources sector, Mr. Speaker, it covers oil and gas, it covers mining, it covers forestry as well too. And what we will see in the mining sector is a number of employment being created, especially with the expansion of the bauxite sector, primarily Bosai and Linden. They will employ a few hundred persons more from either Linden or surrounding area. We will see the OCO project starting to build out that mine in Region 7 in terms of mining, in terms of the oil and gas sectors I mentioned. And we all know that the oil and gas sector, it is not labor intensive, it is more capital intensive. So you will never find the oil and gas sector employing 25,000 people like the forestry sector, or 30,000 people like the mining sector. You will find that the oil and gas sector require more highly skilled technical personnel as we move forward. We only expect one FPSO arriving in Guyana late in 2025. We expect that FPSO to move to production or go into production. So with regards to the oil and gas sector and the expansion of the oil and gas sector, we will only see that FPSO coming later 2025 and going into production sometime late 2025. So I'm sure that in 2020, we will see a difference in terms of not only job creation, but production as well in the oil and gas sector. Thank you.
thank you, Minister. Honorable Member, Mr. Patterson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Same volume, volume 2, page 140. Indicator number 3. Number of new licenses issued for exploration and production activities, 1 in 2024. Sir, you're going to, Miss Minister, you're saying you're issuing 2 this year, sir. Can you tell us who they are, where, sir? Or is it another you can't reveal?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Honorable Member, for the question. Under 264, the one license issued in 2024 would be the whiptail production license. The one in 2024 is whiptail production license, and the two that is expected, the 2 that are expected to be issued in 2025 has to do with the 7th project once it is approved, and possibly the gas project once we advance to that stage too. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable members, I think this is a good time to put a question that is some stated for Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
On the same page, you speak to effective local content strategies are implemented. Could the honorable members say, how is it, which are the approaches they are using to local content? Is it just the question of the company being Guyanese, or would it extend to mean as well that a large percentage of the goods and services that are sold, the content is of Guyanese origin? And if the latter is true, what are the measures you're taking to make it efficacious?
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Chair, let me first of all thank the Leader of the Opposition for the question on local content, because it's a very important area, especially with regards to bringing benefits to Guyanese and Guyanese businesses. Now, the local content legislation or the bill when we passed in Parliament, it set out certain conditions to criteria as to which company or who can be registered as a local business and be given a certificate from the local content secretariat. And we said at that point in time that the company must have at least 51% ownership by Guyanese. So it simply means that we're not shutting out foreign investors or investment, but rather they can partner with Guyanese and Guyanese companies. They can hold 49%. And that company can be registered to acquire a local content certificate. So if we have a company with 51% ownership Guyanese, 49% ownership foreign, it is still considered to be a local company, providing that the other criteria are met too. And the other criteria, we said that the directors, senior management, we must have at least 70% senior management within that company. So even though you might have 49% foreign ownership, you must have 70% local directorship or at a senior managerial level. And then we went further to say that you must have at least 90% local employees working in that company. 90% Guyanese must be working in that company. And even went further, not in the criteria, but even went further to advocate to ensure that the 90% of employees that are employed are at a certain level too. Because we don't want our workers only to be cleaners or labor. Not that anything is wrong with that, but we want Guyanese too to be involved in the technical, managerial, supervisor positions that exist in the oil and gas sector too. Today we have a number of companies registered. The Honorable Opposition Leader would know too that we have had a lot of issues with some companies and some Guyanese. Some Guyanese basically, if I can use the term, selling themselves short, in the sense that they sometimes actually don't hold 51% of the shares in terms of assets or capital invested. But on the submission to Martin, we would see 51% that is owned by the Guyanese company. So it's something that we have guarded against. We have had a number of issues where one company even took us to court, and we have had to sort through those issues. So there are a few issues with regards to the implementation that we've been working to address and to ensure that we can use the local content legislation to bring more benefits to the Guyanese and Guyanese businesses. To date, we have seen significant benefits coming to Guyana. And what I'm happy to note, Mr. Speaker, is that even though there are 40 services in Schedule 1 with specific targets, as we call them, the carve-outs, We are seeing foreign companies coming to Guyana, and even though they want to invest or engage in a service that is not in Schedule 1, they're still engaging local partners because we have made it clear that we are going to review the local content legislation, especially Schedule 1. So that is a good sign to show that even though the service is not within Schedule 1, that these companies have started to look for local partner and local partnership. And that has brought even more benefits to Guyanese. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Minister.
Chairman,
Honorable
I think
Leader
you
of the
missed the
Opposition.
second part of the question. You refer, I said there are two models. One is ownership, which you spoke to. But then at the level of product, for instance, this is a bottle of water. The cork probably came from somewhere, the label from somewhere, the bottle from somewhere, only the water is possibly from here. And even that we're not sure of. The question is, in terms of improving local content vis-a-vis product, what is being done? Because you can have, the ownership is okay, but you can have a local company bring everything from Trinidad or everything from the US, and it does nothing to improve the productive capacity of local products. And to me, it's a deficiency that we should address and recognize.
And Mr. Chair,
Minister, go ahead.
I agree with the Leader of the Opposition. The local content legislation was in no way designed to build out a massive retail sector. And I think that is what the opposition leader is getting to. And we agree, because we said that from inception. We could have left Schedule 1 wide open, and then we could have had companies from Guyana buying pipes and buying Christmas trees and buying risers, and then resell it to Exxon. But then what we have to guard against too is that, and I don't know, it's a Christmas tree. What we have to guard against too, Mr. Speaker, that could have been easily done, but what we have to guard against and know too is that we, Guyana, is paying for half of this. So if we create this massive retail industry, we say that we're offering opportunities to Guyanese that they can just buy these pipes and sell it to Exxon, then they start acting as middlemen. And when you start acting as I'm coming to the point. When you start acting as middlemen, then you carry up the costs, which we are paying half for. So the whole idea behind it was to ensure that we build capacity so that we can manufacture here locally. And that is important. We have to build out capacity in our local private sector so that we can build capacity, we can produce our own products. We can have those companies come in Guyana and establish in Guyana so that whatever is being manufactured is done right here in Guyana. I take, for example, we can always talk about the small producers, the farmers in Blackbush Polder, or the waters you mentioned producing in Guyana and going offshore, or the smaller services that is needed. But what about the valves and the pipes? We could have agreed that a local company can just buy these valves from Italy or wherever, and they can sell it back to Exxon, which will carry up the cost. But if we can encourage those companies to come and establish a presence in Guyana and have it being done right here in Guyana, then only then you would achieve true local content. Only then you would achieve true local content. So the idea behind it is to build capacity so that we can produce locally, that we can build locally, that we can manufacture locally, and not just to build out a retail sector, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, this is a good time to put a question that the sum stated for Program 264, Petroleum Management Capital Expenditure, stands part of the estimates. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. Ayes have it. The sum stated now stands part of the estimates. Thank you, Honorable Minister, and your team for taking us through your agency. Honorable members, let us invite the Honorable Minister of Public Works and his team to take us through Agency 31. As of now, we have 2 minutes of savings. on the schedule.